You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, it's Michelle. How are you doing? This week, we're going to talk about a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, and it's children. Now, for some of you that might not have kids, I still want you to listen. I think you'll find some things helpful here because we're going to be talking about boundaries, we're going to be talking about bonding, and we're going to be talking about monitoring. And if you do have kids, no matter what their age, this episode is incredibly important. For some reason, when I was married to a good man who struggled with addiction, I was incredibly eager and ambitious to learn about how he could get sober. But for whatever purpose, I still haven't figured it out, couldn't quite handle figuring out ways to help my kids who were living with their dad, using drugs and using alcohol and smoking and going out and not coming back home and lying and us fighting under the same roof. It just felt like too much. It was like, let me just fix your dad. Let me figure out how to get him sober. And then all our problems will go away. And we'll be a happy family and life will be good and he can be present for you and he can start coming to your soccer games and he can play with you after work and coming home on time and he can be sober during weekends. So I think that's the motivation behind why I put in all that effort into trying to get him sober. But looking back on that now that I'm out of that relationship and I'm remarried and I'm in a very healthy, happy environment, I can see I was mistaken. That all that energy that I put towards trying to get my husband better came from a really unhealthy place for me, and also that energy should have been put into my kids. And I've been doing this podcast and building this community for about 10 years now. And I can tell you, I've heard that that's a really common mistake that a lot of us make. Looking back on it, we think, oh my goodness, why did we put all that energy into somebody who doesn't even care or want our energy, who ultimately their destiny is their own to create. Whereas we have these youth, we have these dependents, these kids who are genuinely looking up to us to help us raise them and teach them right and wrong and be their safe spot and, monitor them and bond with them. And yet they often get overlooked. And so if you are in a situation right now where you're in a relationship with a loved one who's struggling with addiction, which I guarantee you probably are because there's no other reason to be listening to this podcast or joining our community, then I would suggest, listen, take an honest look. Like, get real with me, get real with yourself and say, where's my energy going? Is it going towards fixing, solving, loving, trying to make better the addiction and the person that's struggling with addiction? Or is it going towards yourself if you don't have any kids, which is where all of your energy should be going and all of your attention should be going? Or is it going to your kids and yourself? And if it's not, just know that there's no judgment here. I mean, for goodness sakes, we don't know what the heck we're doing when we're in a relationship with somebody struggling with addiction. We've never been in that relationship before. So, we're just trying to make it day by day. So there's never any judgment for making, a poor choice, but we're just here to educate you to help you make better choices moving forward. So take inventory. Ask yourself right now, where's my energy going? Now, secondly, if it is not going towards yourself or your kids, I'm going to teach you and talk to you today about how to make that transition, how to stop yourself from continuing to go into these negative behaviors, negative patterns that we're used to because we've more than likely been in this relationship for years. So it's a knee-jerk reaction that our loved ones drink, use drugs, do their addictive behavior, and we react immediately the old way. That's okay. You're just going to stop yourself because you're now aware, and you're going to go, okay, I'm going to shut this down. Like, I'm going to stop this pattern literally right in the middle of it. Or maybe, you didn't catch yourself until the end of it, but next time you'll do it. And then I'm going to put that focus on me and the kids. So, kids, here's the deal with kids. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound like I am trying to separate your family. You're going to easily be able to listen to this and go, wait, are you telling me to get divorced? Are you telling me, Michelle, that it would be best for me to take my kids and remove them from my house and leave my spouse or my loved one who's using drugs and alcohol? And I am here to tell you, yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you to do. If there is drugs, if there is alcohol, if there is fighting, if there is, smoking, anything of any sorts going on in your house, that automatically designates your house as an unsafe place for children. Period. End of subject. It's that freaking simple. It's that cut and dry. Your children deserve to have a place in this world where they can relax, where they can feel loved, where they can feel monitored, where they can feel bonded to you, where they have very clear boundaries. And not having drugs or getting drunk in your home is a very obvious boundary that all of us have the right, particularly children. So if you think, oh, Michelle, I've got kids, they're too young to know what's really going on, they know something's going on. I guarantee you, they know something is going on. They might not understand what. They might not understand dad's bipolar or dad's having an addiction issue or, dad's spending a lot of time looking at his computer late at night, and I'm referring to porn addiction there. They might not understand the specifics, but kids feel. They have feelings and they're intuitive. And they understand mom is upset with dad. They understand when dad's slurring his words that there's something off about dad. They understand if you're a man in love with a woman who's suffering from addiction that mom is not, showing up for soccer practice, or mom looks disheveled, or mom isn't cooking like she used to. There's signs that they pick up on. They're not stupid. They understand something's wrong and they're feeling that. They're internalizing that. And if you're not talking to them and clearly communicating with them the reality of their life, no matter how painful it is and uncomfortable it is for you, they're internalizing that and wondering, well, what is wrong with me? And I know that you love your children, and I know that you're a good parent, and I know that's the last thing that you want them to believe, that somehow, some way, something is going on, something's off in the family, and therefore, I don't feel safe, I don't feel loved, and I feel like maybe it might be my fault, okay? So it is our job, and I've said this over and over again, to be our children's biggest advocate. Because if you are not their advocate, who will be? Who else do they have? Your job as a parent is to stand up for your children, stand up for their safety and their future. And not only that, your job, since you brought this, you chose your partner who has addictive issues, and you brought that partner into their lives, whether it was you chose to have children with them, or maybe, they were your children and this is your second marriage or whatever, because you need to look at yourself and your responsibility for this situation that is your life right now. It is your job to protect them from what you have created or allowed in their environment. It's harsh. What I just said stings probably. And you're probably tempted to turn me off and go, screw you, Michelle. And I hear that and I respect that. But this is a deal. Being part of this community means me giving you loving truths. And the other deal is this: I'm not judging you because I was you. So I get it. I allowed my kids to be in an addictive relationship household for 10 years. So I'm not pointing fingers at you, but I am saying that ultimately it occurred to me when my daughter was literally breathing in the smoke, the pot smoke of my ex-husband. He had smoked pot in a small little toilet area. My daughter went in to use the bathroom. And as she was using the bathroom, she was breathing in the residual marijuana. And I looked at her and I thought, that's it, done. I cannot do this anymore. I don't care if I go broke. I don't care if I have no friends. I don't care if I have to live in a shelter. I don't care if I have to disappoint every single human being, including my parents, in my life. I cannot allow my children to grow up in this environment because I know the writing on the wall. They are going to have major, major issues if I don't get them out. And even though I hadn't done the research at that time, I have research now that backs up that statement. And it says that 65% of kids who start drinking at the age of 13 will become dependent or use drugs. And I knew 13 is young, right? But I knew that percentage would be increasing year by year if they were in an environment where there was drugs and alcohol being used. And that statistic is from the official Journal of American Academy of Pediatrics. So removing your children from the environment of drugs and alcohol is so incredibly important to their future. Having the guts to say, and it takes guts, make no mistake about it, but I know you are super courageous, but having the guts to say, I'm drawing a line in the sand. This is my boundary. You can mess with me all you want to, but you're not going to mess with my babies. I'm going to turn the trajectory of addiction around on its face, and I'm not going to let this cycle continue with my kids. They are already going to have enough temptations with their friends and in their school with drugs and alcohol in the real world. They don't need it at home too. So if your loved one shows zero signs of getting sober long-term, and long-term to me means 12 months, and getting sober means committed to staying sober. It doesn't mean weekend binge drinking. It doesn't mean sobriety does not mean, okay, I'm not going to drink for 4 days and then I'm going to get drunk or wasted and then say, oh, that was a relapse. No, it's not relapsing if you're not having long-term sobriety, meaning 12 or more months. You're still dealing with addiction. So if your loved one shows no signs, and let's get real about it, okay, let's get honest with ourselves. Let's say the truth. Are they really genuinely showing you signs that they are going to get sober for good? Or are they just telling you what you want to hear to get you off their back? If they're not showing signs of sobriety, you need to think about a contingency plan, about getting your babies out of that house, no matter how old they are, and teaching them and modeling for them what it looks like to stand up for yourself, to stand up for your future, to stand up to addiction and say, I don't need to deal with this anymore. I don't need addiction in my life. In fact, I can do way, way better without it. I can be incredibly happy without constantly dealing with chaos and trauma that addiction brings into our life. So, yes, I am telling you to consider the idea of, quote, breaking your family apart, which might actually be better for your children in the long run. They might blame you in the short run. Sure, they might cry, they might yell. In fact, I almost guarantee it. But in the long run, they are going to be grateful because they're going to be able to breathe again in a home where they can relax. They're going to be able to look at you and go, thank you. I get it now. Now that might be years and years away, but they will once they understand what you did for them and the sacrifices that you made for them. I honestly believe, I guess maybe I don't, okay, let me rephrase this. There is a possibility that I might still be married and trying to fix my ex-husband had I not had children and seen how this addiction would affect them. And I left for my kids. And I educated them about that choice all the time. Now, you might be looking for resources like I was about, okay, so I've got these kids and I know that science is telling me there is a strong possibility that they have a genetic predisposition to becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol, regardless if I leave or not. And I would say that's true too. That is a risk all of us are in the same boat with. So what resources are out there for us as parents, sober parents, and loving parents to help our kids reduce the risk of addiction? There is 2 resources I'm going to share with you. And when I share with you resources, you guys, if you haven't caught on, I am absolutely obsessed with research. I research everything to almost an obsession. And these are well-researched, scientifically backed resources I'm going to offer you. So I'm not offering you some pie-in-the-sky book. This is actual, real-life, clinically proven scientific help for family members. So hold on one second. Let me just look this up for you because I just lost it on my computer. Okay, here we go. So the first program I'm going to tell you about is called Strengthening Families Foundation. Actually, it's not a foundation. There is a foundation where you can buy the program for only $5. I just did. And I'm going to make my kids do it. Even though I left years and years and years ago, I still want to regularly educate my children about the risks that they are involved. I have one child that's going off to college. Hopefully, if this virus thing ends, or we learn to deal with it. So I'm sitting here going, now is the time to make sure he is fully equipped and understands exactly the risks that he is up against with addiction. So there's a course, and it's Strengthening Families. This is an organization. Again, there's been clinical trials that have tested the data that know that this actually does improve kids, their prevention from drugs and alcohol. And you can get the course. It's a DVD, or you can order it online for $5 through their nonprofit. So go to Strengthening Families and take a look at that. Also, Focus on the Family has I think there's only 2, there might be 3 resources that have clinical studies backed. And focus on the families is number 2. I'm not sure of the third. I'll look that up. But focus on the family, strengthening families, Google them, get that help that you need. It trains parents exactly what to say, how to communicate with your kids, and what to do. There's worksheets, and then you watch the programs together. So I'm going to be doing that with my kids. I know they're going to be just thrilled about that. But who cares? Like tough deal. Like, I'm the parent here. My job is to educate you kids, and you are going to sit down and we're going to watch this together and we're going to talk about it. And you can eye roll me all you want to. You are sitting down and we are doing this together because I love you and I need you to be sober. And it is my job to do these types of things so we can bond together. I can learn how to bond with you. I can learn the boundaries that you need. I can monitor you in a way that's healthy, obviously. So those are 2 resources, guys. Check those out. I promise you you'll find something in there. I know the Strengthening Families has actually you can look at the free introduction, which I did, which is like 5 minutes of videos. And then I think there's 6 or 7 worksheets, which I've printed out. And I'm going to record this podcast and go downstairs and start with my kids, because we are all in this together. All us parents have all been affected by addiction. And did you know, here's another statistic, 1 in 12 kids live with a parent addicted to drugs and alcohol. 1 in 12. Isn't that amazing? So when we talk about, it's amazing how secretive our community is. But like, if we look out on our street or in our neighborhood, there's typically another family or 2 or 3 that are dealing with this exact same issue. But you'd never know it because we have such shame around that. And don't get me started on that, because we don't need to have shame about this at all. The other last point I want to make before I go, and this is super important, is that there's a National Center of Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia. And I just want to end this on a positive note with something they shared that I think is a goal for us, and for us people out there that like to have goals. I think this is incredibly helpful. They said a child who gets through age 21 without smoking or abusing alcohol or illegal drugs usually won't do so. So if you have kids under the age of 21 and they haven't abused drugs, they haven't abused alcohol, and they haven't smoked, our goal is to get them through 21. Now, for me, I'm sending my kid off to college and I'm going, oh my gosh. I mean, the partying in college. I'm not an idiot. I know, I went to college. It's significant, right, guys? Which is even more a reason why I'm so convicted to go downstairs and get everyone gathered in the living room and play this video, and we're going to do these worksheets. Because we need all the tools we can get. And going back to the beginning, when we were first talking, this is where our energy needs to lie. This is where we can break the pattern of addiction. This is where we can make a difference with our kids, with our families. We can't do that with our loved ones who are refusing to get sober or taking responsibility or accountability. But we can do this. This is where we are powerful. This is where we have incredible choices that will change the trajectory of our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives, and many generations to come. Because the tools that you're going to be working on, learning with your children, are going to be tools that will be passed down for a lifetime. My son was just on featured as a guest on a podcast for, he wants to be a politician. So please pray for me out there if you if you know any politicians, you know what I'm talking about. And so he wants to go to law school and become a politician. So he's on this political, he writes op-eds for newspapers from a political standpoint. And so he was on a podcast and he said, one of the greatest gifts in my family is that all of us children come to the dinner table with different opinions, and my parents allow us to voice them, and they don't convince us we're wrong. So we have learned how to really communicate effectively, use and trying to present, how to argue with one another with respect and kindness, and also how to keep an open mind, but also, it's not dogmatic. That's the word he used, which I loved, in our family. And my dad, I was telling my dad on the phone today, my dad taught me when I was younger that he always wanted me to voice my opinion, especially if it was different from his, because he wanted his kids to be independent thinkers, to think on their own, to have their own opinions. And I was telling my dad, that lesson that you ingrained in my brother and me, I have taught to my children. And now I didn't recognize my 19-year-old could identify that, but he did out loud. And it felt really good. And I thought, well, that's a generational lesson that I hope continues to be passed down to, my son's children and so forth. So you guys, our work as parents matters, not only in the immediate future, but for, our legacy. Also, one final point, it is never, ever too late to bond and affect and help and love your children. So I know a lot of you out there are like, yeah, I made the mistake of not taking my kids out of that environment. They became very similar and had, abused drugs or alcohol like their parent. And it's a huge mistake I made. And now I feel like it's a lost cause. That is not true. That is a lie. I wrote a program for parents with kids who struggle with addiction, and I studied it because, of course, before I write a program, I'm going to research it for a couple years. And I know for a fact it is never too late at all. So to start these patterns with a kid at any age is still making a difference in their lives. So that is it for me. This week, we are talking about our babies, which deserve a voice and deserve our attention and deserve a beautiful future. And you can give them that. You absolutely can. I know that sometimes our loved ones convince us that we are crappy parents. Let me tell you, that is a bold-faced lie. You are an excellent parent. None of us are perfect. We've all made tons of mistakes, but that doesn't mean that we're ineffective at our jobs. So be kind to yourself. Be loving about how you view yourself as a parent, and take that energy that you've been wasting on your loved one and put it towards the people who need you the most. All right, I love you. I hope you found something helpful in this, and I will talk to you next week. I am going to go downstairs to educate my kids, and I am quite certain they are definitely not going to be excited about one more conversation about addiction. But I'm determined. We can do it together. I'll talk to you next week.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with Michelle's personal thoughts and beliefs. From one woman to another, bonded together by the fact we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.